Hello YouTube, welcome back to another alternate history video, and today I got the 2000 presidential election, which of course was held between Texas Governor George W. Bush and Vice President Al Gore. But in this scenario today I got John Kerry, who ran 4 years later and was a nominee. I got him if he ran and got the nomination in this year. Now of course 2000 was after 2 terms of Bill Clinton, so you had party fatigue coming into play and things like that. And Bill Clinton had a pretty good second term there, balancing the budget and things like that. So it made it a pretty close election, of course. And Bush edged Al Gore, of course, winning 271 electoral votes. And of course, Florida was a very controversial state, which gave Bush the win. But in this scenario, we'll see how Kerry could do if he decided to run 4 years earlier. Now, I believe the Mountain West was solid good for Bush, of course. Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, the Dakotas, all of Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, his home state of Texas, as well as Alaska. I believe Arizona would be pretty solid. It was solid Republican for years, as well as the Deep South, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia wasn't really competitive, so I believe good for him, solid. South Carolina, as well as North Carolina, wasn't really competitive in 2000 2004. Bush had really good appeal in the state, so I believe we'll give him, as well as Kentucky, West Virginia, which is a more red state now and definitely is today. And Tennessee was a close state because, of course, Al Gore was from here, but Bush was still able to do better in the rural parts, which gave him the edge here. It was like a 4-point victory over Gore, I believe. But with Gore not being a factor and not on the ticket, I believe Bush could win by a bigger margin than he did in the actual scenario, as well as Missouri. I can't remember if it was that close or not. I would have to look at it again, but since it won for Bush both times, you would think, of course, we'll go him against Kerry in this scenario. Now, Kerry states, of course, would be like Washington. Oregon was a close one, but Gore did better in Portland, the cities. So I believe Kerry would do the same and edge out him over Bush, as well as California and Hawaii and much of the Northeast where he was from, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C., as well as Illinois. Now, these other battleground states, Bush did win Nevada both times because it was less populated back then, and he had good appeal in Clark County where it's more populated now, and Democrats do better today. So since neither Democrat won it, I believe it would edge out Bush like it did in the actual scenario. Now, Al Gore won New Mexico. It was a close one. I believe it was the closest state in the election. A lot of people think it's Florida, but it was really not because New Mexico was separated by about 300 votes, while Florida was separated by 500, but of course they were both so close either way. But Bush did better with Hispanics 4 years later, which is why he was able to win New Mexico over Kerry. But since Bush didn't have as strong numbers with Hispanics 4 years earlier, I believe this state could edge out Kerry like it did Gore, since Gore had better Hispanic numbers 4 years earlier. So I believe the same would happen with Kerry, because of course Bush was moderate on immigration, so he was able to do good in the state, especially 4 years later. But since 2000, I believe it would edge out Kerry. But I believe Bush would win Colorado. However, it was solidly Republican and rural back then. It wasn't as contested as New Mexico, so I believe it would go for Bush. However, Minnesota has always been a Democratic stronghold since the 70s, so I believe it would go Kerry, as well as Wisconsin, Michigan. They were close states, but of course both of these Democrats did better with the unions and working class, so I believe it would edge out Kerry like it did in the actual scenario with Gore and Kerry. However, Gore won Iowa because they did pretty good in the rural parts and cities. Kerry did decent in the rural parts, but of course he did better in the cities 4 years later. But Bush did better in the rural parts when he faced Kerry in 2004, and with that reason, I believe Bush actually could win Iowa in this case. Because like I said, Bush did better in the rural parts when it came to that 4 years later, because Kerry was more of a suburban, urban type candidate. So I believe it could edge out Bush in this case, as well as Indiana would go solidly for him. Say Virginia, Republicans did better in the northern part in Virginia Beach, the more populated areas, up until 2008 from the 60s, so I believe we'll go for Bush. Now, Ohio was close both times, but Bush just had the edge with like rural and working class people. Of course, the Democrats did better in the cities, but since Bush had the edge with rural people, I believe it would edge him out since neither Gore or Kerry could win it. However, I believe Kerry would win Pennsylvania since him and Gore both did better in the suburbs in the state with working class people, as well as New York and all of Maine, I believe, since Kerry is from this region. Now, Bush won New Hampshire, but with Kerry being on the ticket, Kerry did win it 4 years later, and I believe with that factor, he actually could win it in this scenario, being from this region. Like I said, it definitely was close both times, and Bush was a pretty good fit for his state, being a moderate Republican, but since Kerry had better appeal to college educators and being from the region, I believe it could go for him in this scenario. Now, the close state of Florida, which, like I said, was close in the actual scenario, I believe it would be close in this case, too, since it was both times. But since neither Democrat could win it, I believe it would go Bush in this case. Of course, like I said, it was a very controversial state and just close both times, especially 2000. A lot of lawsuits and recounts, but since either Democrat just couldn't get it, since Bush did pretty good in the panhandle, I believe it would edge him out against Kerry. And that still puts Bush over the top at 274 to Kerry's 263. Still a close election like it was in the actual scenario, but just a few more electoral votes for Bush in the actual margin. So if you enjoyed this video, just like, subscribe, and comment. I thank you for watching. Hit the bell for notifications if you haven't yet. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.